Chapter 7. A Miracle. Who wants to go to group? It was the one phrase I could count on to break up the boredom of the week. I picked up my book. There was no way I was going to let Charles see me going to group without it, and headed down the hallway. I actually listened in group this week. No daydreams this time. Probably the first smart thing I had done in years. At the end of the session, Malcolm approached me. "Hey, Tony," he said, putting out his hand. I was surprised that Malcolm remembered my name. It felt uncomfortable to be called by my first name in this place. Not only that, but he had a big smile on his face. That, too, seemed out of place here. "Did you read the book yet?" Malcolm noticed it in my hand. It took me a second to answer. I thought about lying, but then he could have asked me about the book. I hadn't read it, and Malcolm deserved respect, so I told him the truth. "I won't lie to you. No, I haven't read it." I was worried about the wrong person finding out that I had lied to Malcolm, but something also told me that he had knowledge to offer. Something about Malcolm caused people to say such good things about him, and I did not want to miss out on that. Malcolm smiled and said, "Well, kid, at least you're honest." I didn't like being called a kid, but I was only 19. Maybe this old man could teach me something. "Tony, I know that people see me come in here and wonder what I'm doing. But ask around. I really want to help you. I really do help people. People need to read so that they can learn from history and from famous people. If you read, you can learn from people who want to share their experience so that you can have a better quality of life. If you read, you will never be alone. So when I ask you to do this, I'm not doing it for me, but for you. Will you please read the book by next week?" I looked at Malcolm in the eyes. Yes. I almost instantly regretted it. Not only was I in jail, now I had homework. The book sat on my bunk for 2 days. Why didn't I just say no? I was frustrated at the thought I had not been man enough to tell Malcolm I was not interested in reading, much less some stupid book about miracles. Miracles? Yeah, right. Like anything like that would happen to someone like me. Then I recalled how the book had saved me from Charles. I looked out of my cell and saw Charles playing cards at the center of the unit. That jarred me back to the moment. That and a gnawing feeling that I did not want to break the promise I had made to Malcolm. I reluctantly began reading that afternoon. At first, my only desire was to finish the book so that I could tell Malcolm I had read it. I also thought about skipping group from now on and sending the book back with one of my cellmates. I was pretty sure that Charles would find out about that, though. But by the time I got to page 3, I became curious about the book and what it was talking about. Some parts of it seemed to be talking directly to me. By Sunday night, I had finished it, and my mind was busy thinking over what I had read. I had hope for the first time in years that I meant something and that I had a bright future. Reading that book made me realize that if I made better choices and educated myself, I could do things I had not dreamed of before. For the first time, I really looked forward to going to group. I felt great just because I'd read the book. The first book I'd ever read, cover to cover. Now, that really was the greatest miracle in the world. "Time for group. Any takers?" That was the announcement that I'd been waiting for. I let a few other prisoners head down the hall before me so that I would not seem too anxious. Of course, I remembered to bring my book with me. I found a seat near the front so that I could talk to Malcolm at the end of the meeting. This time, I really listened. Malcolm began with his usual greeting. I noticed how he looked around the room as he talked. Actually, he didn't look around the room, but from person to person, being sure to make eye contact with each one. He seemed to be speaking to each individual person. It was cool how Malcolm actually listened to people when they had a question. He didn't just try to get them to shut up. I thought about all that I had heard about Malcolm. He did show up every week, and he treated us with respect, even though we were wearing orange jail uniforms. I wanted to ask Malcolm a few questions, but by the time we were face to face, I didn't have the nerve. I decided to just tell him I had read the book and leave. "Hello, Tony." Once again, the eyes and the handshake. "Did you read the book?" "Yes, sir, sure did." I was proud that I had completed the book. I had read it cover to cover. It felt great to finish something I started. "So what do you think?" "Are you some kind of Simon Potter yourself?" I asked. We both laughed. "Do you have any questions?" I didn't know what to say. The wrong answer here, and I might end up with more homework. But I did have questions, not just about the book, but about Malcolm too. "Well," was all I could get out. "Have a seat." Malcolm knew I had questions, but he started talking, which was good because I didn't know what to say. I'll never forget what he told me. "Tony, I've been doing this a long time. I've been handing out books for years. How many people do you think read the books that I hand out?" "There are many books written, but few are read," he said, smiling. "But you took the action and read the book, and you got something out of it. That's great. What separates winners from losers is action, and the right kind of action. Reading gives you knowledge, and with that, you have the power to do what you want. Most people don't read, but because you read, you have hope." I listened, but I had no idea where Malcolm was going with this. You might be surprised to hear that I've been in your shoes. I remember when I was first handed that book. I thought it was a joke. I had never in my life read a complete book, from cover to cover. And I didn't want to read that one, but I did. And I had questions, just like almost everybody who's ever read it has questions. And the questions are almost always the same. No one ever wants to admit they have questions, but let me give you the answers anyway. The answer to your big question is, yes, Tony. That book is speaking about you and to you. Everything in that book that talks about people being miracles, about them having a purpose in life, about them being able to change and get out of the messes they have created, that was written for you and about you. I sat in stunned silence. Parts of the book had jumped off the page. Sentences whispered they were just for me, with meanings that no one else could understand. How could Malcolm know this? I watched Malcolm speak. He spoke enthusiastically. I could tell he truly believed what he was saying. It sounds corny, but I started feeling enthusiastic myself, even here in jail. That was what you wanted to know, right? Yes, I could barely get the words out. I just wanted to know if that stuff was really true. It is. Do you want to learn more? Yes. Good. Here's what I want you to do. Reread that book this week. Next week, we will go over it together. Will you do that for me? Yes. For a second, I couldn't believe I said it. More homework? This time, I decided it was worth it. And with that, Malcolm said, "Now it's time for me to go, so I will see you at the next meeting." We stood up, shook hands, and I watched Malcolm leave the room.